Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to MyPillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. MyPillow.com, promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in. It is a busy morning as we watched the U.S. Senate yesterday pass narrowly the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, sending it over to the House for final approval following a 27-hour blitz of amendments. The FBI just arrested 2 Chinese nationals accused of spying for the Chinese Communist Party. You're not going to believe this story. Their mission? Collect intelligence on U.S. Navy members and recruit our military to spy against us. Yes, right here on American soil. And President Trump threatened to unleash the Department of Government Efficiency on its former director, Elon Musk, to examine government subsidies handed out to the billionaire's companies, and even suggested he would consider deporting Mr. Musk. Wow. South Carolina legislators voted themselves a pay raise recently that was just put on hold by the state Supreme Court last week after a state senator challenged a raise in court. One problem, the court has also frozen the existing per diem until the case is settled, which means legislators received a pay cut, not a raise.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Senate Republicans narrowly passed the One Big Beautiful Bill. The 51-50 vote took Vice President J.D. Vance to his vote to break the deadlock, and it puts Republicans on track to have the bill to President Trump's desk by the self-imposed 4th of July deadline, if enough House lawmakers stay on board. Now, there's already problems with that scenario because shortly after the Senate voted to approve its version of Trump's bill, Tennessee GOP Representative Andy Ogles introduced an amendment to return the bill to its original House version that passed in late May. Ogles made a series of criticisms about the Senate's version of the bill after it passed yesterday afternoon, including complaints about the bill forcing his constituents to pay for illegal aliens' health care and not doing enough to halt taxpayer dollars from subsidizing green energy projects. Representative Ogles also appeared to take issue with the Senate's changes to the state and local tax deduction, the SALT deduction, lamenting that the Senate dramatically increased the amount Tennesseans are forced to subsidize state and local taxes for wealthy people in blue states like New York, California. Ogles said on X, the Senate caved to the unelected staffer appointed by a Democrat and rushed through an unfinished bill just so they could go home for July the 4th. He says, I don't work for the Senate parliamentarian. I work for the people, in all caps. That's why I just filed an amendment to delete their dud and replace it with a strong House bill we passed weeks ago. The Senate's version of the Big Beautiful Bill guts key Trump provisions, all at the behest of an unelected parliamentarian. So what is the version from the Senate, and where is it headed? Of course, it had some issues from Republicans. Senators Susan Collins of Maine, no surprise there, Rand Paul of Kentucky, and Tom Tillis, of course, of North Carolina, joined all 47 Democrats in voting no. The mega bill, which clocks in at 900 pages, extends most of President Trump's 2017 tax cuts. It reduces taxes on tips and overtime pay and increases spending on defense, border security, and energy exploration while slashing entitlements and some of their outlays. The bundle had inched through Congress, of course, overcoming criticism from all parts of the Republican Party. Look, it's been a busy few weeks since the House passed it. After more than a month of deliberation, the Senate modified the House version of the legislation. They extended business tax deductions. They deepened cuts to Medicaid. They increased the debt limit by $5 trillion and eliminated a moratorium on state restrictions against artificial intelligence. On the Senate side, you had some of the fiscal hawks like Ron Johnson grumbled over the bill. He's been somewhat critical of it, even threatened to derail its passage, but ended up supporting it in the end. Over on the Democrat side, Senator Chris Van Hollen accused the GOP of denying millions of Americans the health care they deserve.
Well, they are taking Medicaid away from people who truly need it. I call this, it's not a work requirement, it's a paperwork requirement. Because what we know is millions of Medicare recipients right now who are working, they already have to demonstrate that they're compliant with all the rules. What this is going to require them to do is, like every month, do more paperwork. And so what Republicans are doing are trying to create more bureaucratic obstacles, more inefficiency in the system that prevents people who are eligible and who are working from actually securing the benefits. I would also point out that in addition to those 11 million people who are going to lose access to health insurance, another 5 million people are going to lose access to health insurance because Republicans, while they extend the tax cuts for billionaires and wealthy people, they are not extending the premium tax credits, the tax credits for people who need them to afford their insurance on the Affordable Care Act, through the Affordable Care Act. So extending tax breaks for billionaires and wealthy people, but not extending those that help lots of middle-class Americans afford health insurance. And if you add up all of that, it's about 17 million Americans who will lose their health insurance.
They always fail to tell you that those Americans that he references are Americans who have the ability to work. They are, as many Republicans have said, able-bodied adults who are capable of work. They're just too lazy to do so. Those are the ones that the Democrats have tried to focus on, to try to convince you that this is a bad thing, that people are going to be going without health insurance, without health care. Well, you go get a job like everybody else does. You get a job and you pay for your health insurance. It's just that simple. In the end, GOP leadership also forced to deal with some of the moderate Republicans who are uneasy with some of the supplemental nutrition assistance programs, the SNAP food stamps. Senator Josh Hawley, he had told NBC News earlier, we can't be cutting health care for working people and for poor people in order to constantly give special tax treatment to corporations and other entities. Hawley was concerned, like some of the others, about the Medicaid. In the end, he voted for it. Another dilemma had been a 10-year moratorium against state regulation of artificial intelligence, which had been included in the House version. That had seemingly been a deal breaker for Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee and drew opposition from House Republicans like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who discovered that provision after it passed the lower chamber. See, that's the thing about these massive bills, 900 pages. You don't really know what all's in them. I don't even know who writes them. After negotiations and some compromising, the Senate decided to strip the AI regulation language completely. Over on the House side, concerns from blue state GOP lawmakers over on the cap on the state and local SALT deductions. That's probably going to be a big one, too. Senate Republicans modified the current 10,000 SALT cap to a 40,000 for most Americans making below 500,000 per year. This is a concession that will be phased out after 5 years. Probably not going to go over well on the House side. Senators had tweaked the House version of the bill to ensure that key business tax breaks, which were set to expire after about 5 years, remain permanent. I applaud them for that. Again, as I've mentioned a couple times this week, I don't know why you would put something in like this for 4 years or 6 years or 10 years. If it's good today, let it be permanent. I mean, overall, the Senate's version of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act would increase the deficit by at least $3.3 trillion if you believe what the Congressional Budget Office says. And I honestly don't know, because some GOP leadership in the Senate, whom I think are pretty smart people, seem to think that that is not an accurate figure. I don't know. It doesn't, according to the OMB, it doesn't account for interest on the debt either, which could push it closer to $3.9 trillion. White House officials have assured the fiscal hawks, as they're known, that more spending cuts will be on the horizon during the appropriations process this fall, and that economic growth as well as tariff revenue will reduce the deficit. And that's what they're counting on. We shall see. In the end, get your popcorn out, because there's going to be some excitement over on the House side when they start deliberation. Joey Hudson here. America is facing a health crisis, and the answer isn't more meds. I lost over 30 pounds on the PhD weight loss plan without Ozempic or any weight loss shots. Don't settle for a lifetime of medication. GLP-1 injections like Ozempic help some people lose weight, but they come with side effects, high cost, and most gain it back when they stop. At PhD Weight Loss, we reveal Big Pharma's big secret. Your body already makes GLP-1, the appetite-fighting hormone. Our program helps your body make it naturally so you'll drop the pounds faster. With the PhD method, no side effects, no long-term risk, no rebound weight gain, just natural, lasting results, all without hunger or cravings. Right now, get a free body scan and personalized metabolic assessment. Discover your body's true potential without a shot. It's free and gives you the keys to your personalized plan. Do like I did and don't trade your health for a quick fix. Call now at 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or visit myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com. We've talked quite a bit lately about the somewhat controversial pay raise that state legislators gave themselves this past session. It amounted to an additional $1,500 per month for in-district expenses. Now, let me pause here for just a moment, because I don't fault legislators for the pay raise, honestly. They don't make enough, and we'll get to that in just a minute. I talked about this the other day, got a phone call from Representative Daniel Gibson from the Greenwood-McCormick area. He was one of the legislators who had some questions on the entire vote. I suggested to Representative Gibson that they should have voted for the raise, but to take it next term. Let the voters decide next November if they deserve it, and if they're reelected, then they get the raise. Again, we'll get to that in just a minute. The interesting thing, though, a new development in this, is that, the old open a can of worms theory, well, that's kind of what they did. State legislators will now get a pay cut following a state Supreme Court order that halted the in-district compensation payments. Here's the story. Last week's order came in response to a legal challenge over this $1,500 monthly raise. Now, prior to this, they were receiving $1,000 a month. They've been receiving that $1,000 a month since 1995 under the same budget clause that became collateral damage in this pause by the Supreme Court. Now, again, that's the reason I say they deserve a raise. They've been getting the same thing since 1995. So if the state's high court sides with the state senator questioning the constitutionality of the raise, the pay could go away altogether, cutting legislators' income by $12,000 a year. The change would apply only to the money meant to pay for duties outside of the State House. Legislators would still receive their annual pay of $10,400. Again, that's not a lot of money. So contrary to popular belief, serving in the legislature doesn't always mean riches, because $10,400, again, would you work for $10,400 a year? They also get $240 per day per diem when they're in session, too, for travel, regardless of where they live. Now, because legislators rewrote the existing clause instead of adding a new one with the increased amount, that means that the entire sum that they would receive has been negated. The Supreme Court has basically said you got to put a pause on everything as far as the in-district expense. Senate President Thomas Alexander wrote a letter to senators last week saying, in light of the court's order, I want to inform you that at a minimum, no in-district payments will be made on July 16th or August 16th. To be specific, this amount includes both the prior $1,000 as well as the $1,500 increase. Any future payments will depend on further action by the Supreme Court in this matter. Now, the reason he's saying July and August is the court has given all parties involved through September to respond to the suit. I'm told that House members received a similar notification from the House clerk emphasizing that the decision will affect the entire monthly payment, not just the additional pay raise that was voted on. And look, even the 44 Republicans in both the House and the Senate who turned down the increase, they're going to lose their normal $1,000 per month too because of the overall situation here. And if this case is like other cases, I mean, it may be a while before this is resolved. Again, the court order is, set a deadline of September 4th for legal filings, but it could take longer because they're at the mercy of the schedules of the justices. If the justices decide that the raise is unconstitutional, then they can't keep the original payment either. So that would eliminate the original $1,000 that they've been getting since 1995. Again, the old open a can of worms theory. Now, legislators could reinstate the original amount, but by legislation, by putting it back in the budget next year. But think about this. What's next year? 2026, election year. Getting the votes to do something during an election year might be a little tough. In this case, legislators would go at least a year and a half with the lowest salary that they've had in decades. In other words, they would just get the $10,400, no in-district expenses at all. Now, Senator Wes Clymer, who is challenging the raise in the court that started this whole process, said that he didn't have a problem with the in-district compensation itself, he added, but rather with legislators increasing it during a non-election year. He's from Rock Hill. He said, it's unfortunate. It's not the desired outcome, but the fault for this outcome lies with those who tried to cheat. That outcome is still better than the legislature appropriating itself the people's money in real time. And again, I think Senator Clymer is like me. He doesn't think that any sitting legislator should be able to approve a raise for themselves. Clymer is represented by former Senator and Columbia Attorney Dick Harpootlian. He's argued in court filings that the raise violates a provision in the state constitution that bars legislators from increasing their own per diem. This dates back to 1890, and a lot of people believe that this 1890 Constitution still governs the state, that when it went into effect, it used the word per diem, and it was the only payment that legislators received at the time. In other words, they were just they received a per diem each day to cover their expenses to serve. They didn't have a salary. Now, attorneys for the House and Senate have argued that the constitutional clause barring legislators from raising their own per diem applies only to the subsistence stipends meant to cover meals and lodging. The in-district compensation qualifies as a reimbursement, they believe, even though legislators don't have to report how they spend the money. And see, that's the other thing. You know, I think that they kind of did an end around here. Rather than increasing their $10,400 salary, they increased their in-district expenses, thinking, well, there won't be a whole lot of objection to this, but yet there's nothing says that they have to use that $1,500 on stamps or printing or envelopes or whatever. They can use it any way they want, and I think that's the problem that a lot of people have with this whole process. So it's going to be interesting to watch. You know, this is one of those cases to where maybe they should have left well enough alone. Or, again, voted on a raise that would take effect after next year's elections, when, in effect, they really aren't voting for a raise for themselves. You agree? Email me, text me, joeyhudson.com. Folks, I don't say this lightly, but this next story is something that should shake every freedom-loving American to the core. 2 Chinese nationals, and I'm not talking about dissidents, I'm not talking about innocent students, but agents recruited and directed by the Chinese Communist Party's top intelligence agency were arrested right here in the United States on American soil. Why? What was their mission? To infiltrate our military, collect intelligence on our Navy, and recruit American service members to spy for the Chinese government. Is this concerning to you? I mean, let that sink in. This isn't some Hollywood movie. This is a real-life espionage operation carried out by the Ministry of State Security, which is China's version of the KGB. And it played out in cities like Happy Valley, Oregon, and Houston, Texas. The FBI says the two men, who have been identified as Yuan Chen and Liren Lei, were deep in the business of betrayal. And folks, this wasn't some one-off intel grab. This was years of calculated, coordinated intelligence work on behalf of the Chinese communist regime. They've been planning this. They've been working on this for years. Now, this comes on the heels of CIA Director John Ratcliffe telling Laura Trump on My View with Laura Trump on the Fox News Network just recently that U.S. intelligence is actively encouraging the Chinese people to pass on information they have directly to the U.S. government through communications networks set up and promoted by using some Mandarin language videos. Here's the exchange between CIA Director Ratcliffe and Laura Trump.
We were accused of outsizing China as a threat. It was a peaceful China, right? And but now after COVID, after the Taiwan aggression, after flying spy craft over the United States for 8 days during the Biden administration, stealing our intellectual property, taking advantage of us on trade, no one's saying that anymore. So the way to counter China is to go on offense. And so we released two Mandarin-speaking videos to the Chinese people, inviting them to contact us through the dark web, because a lot of the people in China are not happy with what's happening, and they can be, great sources of intelligence for us. We'll have more people inside, behind China's Great Wall, and giving us intelligence and information on what's happening with the PRC and its ruling party, the Chinese Communist Party. It's those types of things that we're really focused on when it comes to China, is making sure, again, that we're collecting more and reporting more intelligence for the president to give him his advantage that he needs when he deals with President Xi.
So back to these spies. What exactly were they doing? According to the Justice Department, Chen and Lei weren't just watching from the sidelines. They were actively recruiting U.S. Navy personnel to assist the Chinese Communist Party. We're talking covert meetings, surveillance of military installations, even cash payments left in backpacks through what's known in the intelligence world as a dead drop. That's kind of like spying 101, straight from the pages of Cold War tradecraft. And it's being used right now against our men and women in uniform. Chen lived in Oregon, was caught photographing recruitment center bulletin boards, snapping shots of Navy recruits, many of whom were Chinese nationals, and sending that data straight back to Chinese intelligence officers in China. At one point, he even took a private tour of the USS Abraham Lincoln, yes, a U.S. aircraft carrier, and allegedly sent detailed information about the sailor who gave him the tour directly to MSS. Now, that's not just infiltration. That's, I would think, a national security breach. Don't you think? Now, the response from federal authorities has been swift and, look, overdue. FBI Director Kash Patel did not mince words. He said, and I'm reading from his quote, "These individuals were acting on behalf of a hostile foreign intelligence service, part of the Chinese Communist Party's broader efforts to infiltrate and undermine our institutions." So let me translate that for you. This is war. Not with tanks and missiles, at least not yet, but with spies, sleeper agents, high-level intelligence operations designed to weaken America from within. And this doesn't even take into consideration all the farmland the Chinese are buying, and we continue to sell to them. That's been a problem for years now. They continue to literally buy our country. Let me tell you something else here. This isn't just about these two guys caught with a camera at a military base. It's really part of a broader strategy by the Chinese Communist Party to erode American dominance economically, culturally, and militarily. As Assistant Attorney General John Eisenberg put it, hostile foreign intelligence services like the PRC's MSS dedicate years to cultivating assets inside the United States. They're out there working every single day, folks, trying to convince United States citizens, United States service members to turn on their own country. And look, I'm sorry to say this, but human greed makes it possible. Unfortunately, we sometimes have some bad actors in our military, and you flash some cash in front of them, and they'll hand over the goods. And this is part of these two guys are part of a much larger network. They're not operating in a vacuum. Now, I know what some people are going to say. Joey, we already knew China was spying on us. Yeah, we did. I mean, look, the Chinese, the spy balloon that floated across Montana, floated across the East Coast out to the ocean, as the mainstream media just watched it for days. This should tell you that the Chinese have a coordinated campaign to recruit our own service members to their side, American sons and daughters, to betray their country. And again, you get back to that human greed factor, and money. Money can buy almost anything. It's one thing for the Chinese to hack our servers. It's another thing entirely for them to try and turn our soldiers into Chinese spies, and that's what they're trying to do. So is there going to be outrage? And where's the accountability? Are we going to demand accountability here? The Biden administration was too busy handing out diversity grants to colleges and worrying about pronouns in the Pentagon. Meanwhile, China was planning agents across the nation, from college labs to Navy ships. And the Biden administration they had no clue. They were too interested in being politically correct and serving those leftists who were woke. And in case you missed this little nugget here, one of the arrested spies had previously been in China discussing payment plans with MSS officers. They literally got paid to betray our military. And here's the kicker, the max penalty, 10 years in prison, $250,000 fine. $250,000 fine is nothing if you got the Chinese government backing you. That's a slap on the wrist. So let me say this again. This is what foreign aggression looks like in our current world, in today's world. You don't need to send tanks across a border. You can infiltrate your enemy's military, you can steal their secrets, and you can pay their own citizens, their own soldiers, to turn against them. And that's what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. And it looks like we're letting them, doesn't it? I mean, I hate to think about this. I hate to think about the fact that we have some service members who would do this to their country, but we've seen a lot worse, haven't we? Which means we got to get serious about counterintelligence. We have to support things like the video program that CIA Director Ratcliffe was just describing. We got to go on the offensive. And let's not forget, under President Trump, we saw real steps taken to stand up to China. Trade tariffs, shutting down CCP spy consulates, launching the China Initiative to root out academic and industrial espionage, and we have to encourage the president to continue those in his second term. Because when Biden took over, the China Initiative was scrapped. It was gone. Because it was, and get this, here's how a member of the Biden administration described it. It was racially insensitive. I mean, that's laughable. We're concerned about being racially insensitive to the Chinese when they're out to kill us. They're out to destroy us. But that's just another example of the Biden administration. They were too focused on being politically correct and not hurting people's feelings. I guess they didn't want to hurt the Chinese feelings. Well, tell that to the sailors whose names were photographed and sent overseas. Tell that to the FBI agents working around the clock to disrupt foreign operations. And tell that to the American people who deserve better than a government that looked the other way. Well, folks, Donald Trump's in town now. Things have changed. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. Well, the feud between President Trump and Elon Musk escalated yesterday with the president suggesting that the federal government might investigate the billionaires' companies over subsidies they receive, and even floated the idea, you ready, for possibly deporting the South African-born tech titan. Trump's remarks came after Musk, of course, who is the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX and one of the wealthiest individuals in the world, launched a blistering attack on the president's centerpiece legislative package, the One Big Beautiful Bill, calling it, quote, utterly insane, and accusing it of jeopardizing America's economic future. And this is what started or caused the break in their relationship just about a month or so ago. On Truth Social, President Trump accused Musk of being the largest beneficiary of government subsidies in modern history and questioned whether the billionaire could survive without them. Here's what he posted. Elon may get more subsidies than any human being in history by far, and without subsidies, Elon would probably have to close up shop and head back home to South Africa, the president wrote. No more rocket launches, satellites, or electric car production, and our country would save a fortune. Perhaps we should have DOGE take a good hard look at this. Big money to be saved, in all caps. Wow. Of course, the Department of Government Efficiency is a Trump-era agency. It was aimed at eliminating waste and corruption in federal spending. Ironically, Mr. Musk once served as the head of the agency and kind of kicked it off on day one of the Trump administration number 2. Speaking to reporters yesterday morning on the White House lawn, President Trump doubled down on his criticism and suggested Musk might not be welcome in the country much longer if he continued attacking the administration. I mean, this is like a high school feud between two guys, isn't it? The only difference is they're two billionaires, the two very powerful men. Trump said when asked directly if he was considering deportation, he said, we'll have to take a look.
I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put DOGE on Elon. You know what DOGE is? DOGE is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated. And you know what? When you look at it, not everybody wants an electric car. I don't want an electric car. I want to have maybe gasoline, maybe electric, maybe a hybrid, maybe someday a hydrogen. If you have a hydrogen car, it has one problem. It blows up.
President Trump yesterday on the White House lawn as he was getting ready to depart the White House. Musk's criticism, I guess, began heating up over the weekend. He argued that the One Big Beautiful Bill would hurt the innovation economy by pouring trillions into what he called outdated industries and bloating the federal government. He warned that the bill would lead to job losses, economic inefficiency, and weaken America's competitive edge in emerging tech sectors. Now, of course, that has to be tough for the president to hear this type of criticism from a guy who had been one of his biggest cheerleaders. I mean, this relationship between President Trump and Elon Musk just went sideways pretty quickly, didn't it? Musk posted on X, "The latest Senate draft bill will destroy millions of jobs in America and cause immense strategic harm to our country. Utterly insane and destructive. It gives handouts to industries of the past while severely damaging industries of the future." He didn't stop there. Mr. Musk later said that lawmakers backing the bill while campaigning on spending cuts should be ashamed of themselves. He warned them of consequences at the ballot box, vowing to help unseat them in their primaries. And look, this is a man who has the ability to do that. He can pour millions of dollars into challengers, possibly challengers who would not have even had a chance because they couldn't raise the money prior to this. Also on X, he said they will lose their primary next year if it's the last thing I do on this earth. Monday, Musk proposed the formation of a new political party, claiming that the current landscape had evolved into what he called the Pork Pig Party. His animosity seems to stem primarily from the bill's elimination of an EV mandate that the president mentioned that would have benefited Tesla, of course. President Trump claimed that Musk's outrage was rooted in this policy change, that he wants everybody to have to buy a electric vehicle. Trump said it's ridiculous and was always a major part of my campaign. Electric cars are fine, but not everyone should be forced to own one, and I agree. I don't care if you buy an electric vehicle. If you want one, fine, but don't make me have to buy one. Don't use my federal tax dollars to support the industry. Now, despite these latest tensions, President Trump noted that Mr. Musk had previously apologized after their initial clash a few weeks ago. He suggested that the reconciliation between the two is still possible. However, that didn't stop the president from issuing veiled threats. When the president's talking about deporting him, I would suspect that's only going to add fuel to the fire. I mean, it's become a spectacle, hasn't it? Trump's allies defending the president's right to push back against Musk, while critics say it's a dangerous move to threaten retaliation against private citizens for political disagreements. And look, this is a very public feud. It's not like you and I getting crossways with a family member or one of our good friends. Nobody knows about it. You can fix it privately, quietly. In this case, everybody's pouncing on it. It is wide open. They're communicating with the media. But look, the threat of government scrutiny, that's not an empty one. If DOGE were to launch a probe that could examine how much taxpayer money has flowed into Tesla, SpaceX, his other companies. And look, it's on the up and up. I mean, the subsidies that Tesla receives because of the EVs, the Biden administration supported that. I'm not accusing Elon Musk or Tesla or SpaceX of some underhanded dealings. That's how the government operates, unfortunately. But if you put crosshairs on it, if it comes out in the public, as the president said, it could be the demise of Tesla. I don't know their financials. I don't know how much they rely on government subsidies, but I would imagine their research department probably relies heavily on a lot of these subsidies. Let's just hope the two guys get this settled quickly. That's it for today's show. Tara's up next, followed by Mike Gallagher, Bill Frady, Charlie James. We're back again tomorrow at 5 a.m. for your first cup of coffee in Sunrise, Carolina. Until then, folks, remember, God's got this. He's still in control. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.